Why Lot's daughters lay with their own father. The complete story of Lot in the Bible. Imagine a scenario of evil and depravity, where human beings seek to have relations with angels and daughters end up getting pregnant by their own father. Today, we will explore the story of Lot, a man whose decisions put him at the center of extraordinary events. Prepare yourself to witness the judgment and wrath of God, which will culminate in the destruction of a civilization. Therefore, I ask that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow us until the end of this story. The first time we hear about Lot in the Bible is recorded in the book of Genesis, beginning in chapter 11. The story of Lot, an important figure, begins with some uncertainty about the origin and meaning of his name. Some scholars suggest that it may represent the idea of a veil that covers, symbolizing the importance of presenting oneself well to others. According to the Bible, after the death of his father, Lot left Ur of the Chaldees and traveled to Aram, accompanied by his grandfather Terah, his uncle Abraham, and Sarai. When Abraham left Aram after Terah's death, Lot followed him to Canaan. During a period of great famine in the region, Lot and Abraham went down to Egypt and settled there. However, after being deceived, the Pharaoh of Egypt expelled Abraham and Sarai, forcing Lot to return with them to Canaan. During this period, both Abraham and Lot prospered significantly. Their flocks grew so large that the region could no longer accommodate them, which led to disputes between their shepherds. The biblical narrative highlights the contrast between the choices Abraham and Lot made in the face of the circumstances that arose in their lives. Abraham is described as someone who obeys and trusts in God's promises, and this faith guides his decisions, making him a remarkable example of someone who puts divine interests above his own earthly desires. An important episode in biblical history involves three mysterious visitors to Mamre. One day, Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent, in the shade of some trees, when he noticed the presence of three men before him. The description suggests that these visitors were of a supernatural nature, for Abraham immediately bowed down in reverence before them. At this point, he demonstrated exemplary hospitality, inviting them to stay, offering them water to wash their feet and food to refresh themselves. During this encounter, Abraham and Sarah received surprising and life-changing news. One of the visitors announced that the following year, Sarah, now elderly, would bear a son. This promise would be fulfilled, marking a pivotal moment in the history of faith. The story of Lot aligns with God's earlier promise to Abraham, in which he had assured the patriarch of numerous descendants, comparable to the stars in the sky. The episode of the visit to Mamre not only highlights Abraham's exemplary hospitality, but also reveals the intimate and personal nature of the relationship between God and his faithful servant. On the other hand, Lot seemed increasingly seduced by the temptations of the material world and by the apparent prosperous opportunities. For these reasons, Abraham and Lot decided to separate. At the time of their separation, Abraham generously allowed Lot to choose the land he would occupy first. Abraham's decision to separate from Lot, seeking to preserve harmony and avoid conflict, demonstrates the spiritual maturity of this patriarch, who valued peace and communion with God more than material disputes. Lot chose the green plains of the Jordan towards the Dead Sea, near Sodom. He was attracted by the beauty and fertility of the region, allowing himself to be influenced by purely material reasons. Although this choice was understandable from a human point of view, it reveals Lot's vulnerability to the seductions of the world, in contrast to Abraham's spiritual steadfastness. After the separation, Lot settled in Sodom, where he quickly became involved in local affairs and seems to have achieved a prominent social position. However, the Bible describes the inhabitants of Sodom as extremely wicked, a situation that deeply distressed Lot. The Apostle Peter, in the New Testament, describes how Lot was distressed daily by the wickedness he witnessed in the city. While Lot was in Sodom, a battle took place in which Mesopotamian kings defeated the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zor. In this conflict, all of Sodom's possessions were plundered and many inhabitants, including Lot, were captured. Informed of what had happened, Abraham organized a rescue force and in a night battle defeated the enemy army, recovering the possessions of Lot and his family. It was during this episode that Abraham met Melchizedek. Despite the war involving Sodom, Lot did not leave the city, and his story continued to be told in the Bible. The narrative continues with the visit of angels to Sodom. The city continued to be immersed in chaos and wickedness, and the divine presence there underscores God's concern with human wickedness. This situation resonates with the message of the book of Jeremiah, chapter 23, verse 24, which emphasizes that God is attentive to the outcry resulting from injustice. Divine intervention in human affairs reflects God's commitment to righteousness and his willingness to act in the face of wickedness. The Lord revealed his intention to investigate the sins of Sodom, showing his justice and rejection of wickedness. Faced with such disappointment, God decided to destroy the city. The Bible highlights the depravity of the inhabitants of Sodom, especially evident in the way they treated the angels of the Lord. The men of Sodom, in their sinful conduct, desired to have sexual relations with the angels, which was one of the main reasons for the destruction of the city. During this turmoil, Lot attempted to pacify the situation in a controversial way by offering his daughters to the men of the city, which reflects his weakness and the harmful effects of the city on him. At this point, the Bible delves deeper into Abraham's courageous intercession before God, revealing his genuine desire for divine understanding and justice. Abraham, aware of the imminent destruction of Sodom, dared to question the possibility of sparing the righteous along with the wicked. This bold dialogue resonates with the exhortation in the book of James, chapter 5, verse 16, which highlights that the prayer of a righteous man avails much in its effects. The narrative continues with the negotiation between Abraham and God, in which Abraham dares to question the possibility of sparing the city for the sake of the righteous. Psalm 86, verse 15, reflects this context, proclaiming that the Lord is compassionate and merciful, very patient, full of love and faithfulness. This reflection highlights God's willingness to hear the supplications of his servants and his readiness to act with compassion in the face of fervent intercession. The story reveals not only God's compassion, but also the importance of persistence in the pursuit of justice and mercy. When God decided to destroy the cities of the plain, including Sodom and Gomorrah, the Bible records a remarkable event. Before the destruction of Sodom, Lot and his family were rescued by two angels sent by the Lord. This deliverance occurred thanks to divine mercy and God's commitment to the covenant established with Abraham. When the inhabitants of Sodom insisted on capturing the angels afflicted them with blindness. The angels then ordered Lot to take his family out of the doomed city. However, Lot hesitated to leave Sodom, and the angels had to forcibly lead him out of the city. During the escape, the family was warned not to look back, but Lot's wife disobeyed this order and was turned into a pillar of salt. The transformation of Lot's wife into salt is a dramatic representation of the consequences of disregarding God's guidance. Lot, although spared from imminent destruction, is not exempt from the moral consequences of his choices. His decision to settle near Sodom exposed his family to a corrosive environment. The story reveals Lot's struggle to maintain his moral integrity amidst the corruption that surrounded him. Lot's experience resonates with the contemporary challenges faced by Christians who often find themselves in societies where values contradict biblical teachings. After leaving Sodom, Lot and his two daughters went to a small town, afraid to stay there, fearing for their lives. They sought refuge in a cave in a mountainous region, demonstrating a certain hesitation in trusting God's plan completely. This attitude of Lot's contrasts with Abraham's unwavering confidence throughout his journey, even in the face of uncertainty and hardship. Lot's decision to seek refuge in a cave symbolizes, in a way, the human tendency to seek isolation when faced with adversity. The cave represents not only a physical shelter, but also a state of emotional and spiritual seclusion. This raises the question of how traumatic experiences can affect a person's ability to fully engage in life and relationships. It was in this location that a terrible event occurred. Fearing for their safety, Lot's daughters, concerned about ensuring the family's inheritance, felt isolated and without prospects of finding husbands. They devised a plan in which they got their father drunk and, driven by a lack of understanding of moral and ethical norms, each of them ended up sleeping with Lot on consecutive nights, thus seeking to produce offspring. From this incestuous union were born Moab and Ben-Ammi, who gave rise to the nations of Moabites and Ammonites, respectively. These peoples brought many problems to the Israelites throughout biblical history. The narrative of Lot in the Bible continues to highlight his complex and controversial relationship with his daughters after the events in Sodom. However, after these events, Lot's story remains unbroken. More details. It is not known for sure whether he managed to rebuild his life or whether he ended his days in the cave in the mountains where the events took place with his daughters. It is interesting to note that the Apostle Peter mentions Lot in his second epistle, especially in verses 7 and 8 of chapter 2. This passage is a new reference to the episode of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah in the New Testament. Jesus also mentions Lot in the Gospel of Luke in an apocalyptic context, recalling the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and the salvation of Lot. This account serves as a reminder for the end times, highlighting the importance of readiness and obedience to God. The biblical account shows us that Lot had the opportunity to learn from Abraham, known as the father of faith. However, unlike Abraham, Lot was not guided by faith, but rather by his own perceptions and desires. This personal approach brought many afflictions and left deep scars on his family. The story of Lot serves as a clear example of the consequences of choices guided more by personal visions than by faith and divine guidance. Valuable lessons for the Christian life today emerge from this account. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah highlights the importance of making ethical choices, even when faced with cultural pressures to the contrary. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, exhorts believers not to conform to the standards of this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of their minds. Romans 12, verse 2. This passage demonstrates the need for contemporary Christians to remain firm in their faith and moral values, regardless of external influences. The story of Lot, recorded in the Bible, is a powerful lesson about the consequences of personal choices and the lack of full trust in God. His behavior, often guided by earthly impulses and desires, contrasts with the unwavering faith of his uncle Abraham, who always placed his trust in God's promises, even in the face of adversity. Lot's decision to isolate himself and his actions in Sodom reveal the dangers of straying from moral and spiritual principles, showing that when we neglect divine guidance, we can find ourselves in complicated and harmful situations, both for ourselves and for our families. This story also highlights the importance of making choices based on faith and divine wisdom, especially in times of social and cultural pressure. The story of Lot teaches us that although God is merciful and willing to save the righteous, our choices have real impact, not only on our lives, but on generations to come. For contemporary Christians, this story serves as a reminder that even in a world full of temptations and values that run counter to biblical teachings, it is essential to remain firm in faith and God's principles. As we reflect on Lot's life, we are called to ponder our own choices and the importance of seeking divine guidance in all areas of our lives. The lessons learned from this biblical narrative continue to be relevant today, encouraging us to live with integrity and trust in God, regardless of the challenges we face. I hope that Lot's story can inspire us. Leave your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click on one of the 2 videos that will appear on the screen to continue watching. Hugs, and may God be with you.